She's the Director of Asian American and Diaspora Studies at Duke University. And she specializes in theater history and dramatic criticism. She teaches and writes about Asian American theater, Korean diaspora theater, and globalization and theater. She is the editor of 7 contemporary plays from the Korean diaspora in the Americas that appeared from Duke in 2012. She was the chief editor of Theater Survey, the flagship journal of the American Society for Theater Research, and in 2015, she published a book on the theater of David Henry Plum that came out from Bloomsbury Methuen Drama. And in addition, there is another edited volume, Modern and Contemporary World Drama from Bloomsbury in 2022. So the title of our talk today is Made Up Asians, Yellowface During the Exclusion Era. Please join me in welcoming Professor Esther Kibley.
Thank you to everyone in the department, especially Professor Wu, who made it possible for me to visit you today. I'm very excited to talk about the book because it's finally coming out. It takes years for a book to come out, and I finished it many months ago, like not a year ago, but it's good to see it finally seeing the world. So Yellowface describes the theatrical convention of using makeup, costumes, and visual technology to transport someone to look East Asian. In most cases, the skin is darkened, the eyes are altered with eyeshadow, tape, or prosthetics to make them look slanted. The makeup is often accompanied by costumes and settings intended to inspire fantasies of exotic faraway land, and by gestures and sounds that evoke the foreign. Yellowface can be traced to early representations of so-called Oriental, and all of these historical terms, just imagine them all in these scare quotes. I'm using them as kind of originally used during the time when they were used. Or barbarian, such characters on European stages. And costumes identified as Chinese or Tartar have commonly appeared in European plays since at least the 16th century. In the U.S., and my book is really U.S.-centric, so I'm talking about Yellowface in U.S. So in U.S., the most prevalent type of Yellowface character has been the Chinaman, who you see on your left. In fact, one essential characteristic of Yellowface is its persistence. Asian American actors have been protesting Yellowface at least since the 1960s, but Yellowface continues to appear well into the 21st century. Why is this? Why does it persist? This is one central question that I try to address in my book. One explanation for Yellowface's durability is that despite its long history, little is known about where the practice originated, how it evolved. Both defenders and opponents of Yellowface frequently lack a common historical understanding of the phenomenon, and their arguments are often tautological and self-serving. So technique, for me, is essential to understanding Yellowface because the typical mode of examining racial representation, which is mimesis, is insufficient. Racial representation is often understood as imitation of racialized people. The Yellowface, however, cannot be, for example, like in blackface minstrelsy, you think of white people, making fun of black people by imitating them. Imitation becomes, or mimesis becomes keyword. But in Yellowface, we can't fully explain the concept by using mirroring or mimicry as theoretical framework because Asians are excluded from the national imaginary for the most of U.S. history. Asians are numerical minorities consisting of less than 1% of the population during the exclusion era. More importantly, when the presence was acknowledged, many plays, musicals, operas, and films featured Asians in Asia rather than America, depicting them as foreign, exotic, strange, and dangerous. In this sense, Yellowface can be seen as a powerful symbol of the perpetual foreigner, a stereotype that many Asian Americans still encounter. Yellowface has always symbolized the foreign, the strange, the undesirable, and the excluded. When made-up Asians were represented by white performers in Yellowface, these mimetic acts reinforce symbols of exclusion. One major topic that runs throughout the book is theatrical makeup. and how it evolved throughout the exclusion era. In writing the book, I examined dozens of makeup guidebooks to trace this evolution. Starting with the first one, the very first one published in the US, How to Make Up, a Practical Guide to Making Up, published by Samuel French, who you may know as a major publisher of scripts even now. This is and Samuel French, of course, being one of the most important publishers of plays in Anglophone theater history. So just as race scientists assume that the default human, this is race science coming from Europe, it's a Eurocentric notions of race, human difference. So Eurocentric or European race scientists assume that the default human is the Caucasian male. Just as they did that, this book is written primarily for the Caucasian male actor. With the exception of a short section also called Ladies, the entire book is written for male actors who have so-called Anglo-Saxon look. Moving on to film technology. Because film is in black and white, it was very difficult to translate that precise shade of brown to black and white film. And in fact, early film, it did the opposite. So a white woman with blonde hair and blue eyes would look like she has like black eyes and blue, like dark skin, like white. It was like really difficult to translate different colors, like in reality so you would see a lot of early like silent film era, they all look really pale. They overdid it. So distinguishing orangish brown, yellow from a Caucasian complexion was really tricky. And camera close-ups demanded a different way to make Asian characters look different from white characters. And one way this was done was with eye makeup. And really ironically, for white actors to look white on black and white film, they had to wear the Chinese complexion color. So when you look at like 1930s, like Max Factor guidebook for cinematic makeup, they will say, put on number 24, also Chinese, the name makeup. It's really ironic how they did that. So because complexion was no longer a way to distinguish whites from Asians, the focus really became eyes. Eyes became really almost like an obsession with these makeup artists. So as you can see here, they had to act side by side. In the film, The General Died at Dawn, 1936. One can imagine how surreal Philip Ahn must have felt acting next to a non-Asian actor playing a Chinese character wearing eyepieces molded from his Korean eyes. So now after listening to all this, you may be asking, why didn't they just hire an Asian actor? Why didn't they just hire Philip Ahn, right? That would have been less expensive, and many hours in the makeup room would have been saved. But all joking aside, that is a core question. Why did directors and producers go as far as they did to cast a white actor in an Asian role when it was so much more expensive to do so compared to casting an Asian actor for the same role? One reason is that during the Asian exclusion era, American acting style shifted toward realism and emphasized natural ways of depicting characters. It became increasingly important for characters to look and sound as if they are real human beings. The systematic method of realistic acting requires actors to not only train their voices and bodies, but to study the characters scientifically. Actors apply psychological studies of the human mind to imagine the emotional state of their characters, and so-called natural acting entail more than carefully observing and imitating real people's behavior. The notion of natural acting emphasized science-based studies of the human body and mind. With yellow face technology, white actors brought forth new realities and revealed imagined, made-up Asians that had nothing to do with real Asians, but with their exclusion. Thank you.